Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to continue on with our microeconomics unit, and we're going to talk about the different types of economies and the different types of businesses. Before we talk about the different types of businesses, we need to know how to increase productivity. So what is productivity? It means that we are making the most of what we have. So how can you increase? Well, first you specialize. That means that you focus on one small task. Like I teach only social studies. I would be an awful math teacher because I don't teach math. Division of labor, that'd be like dividing tasks into or dividing tasks among people. So like at our school, you have people that teach social studies, people that teach math, people that teach science, to try and get the best possible education for each student. Technology is when you apply knowledge to a task. So we all have smart boards, we have computers, we have tablets, which is much more advanced than when there was just chalkboards and pencils and papers. And education. So education is training and educating people to be more effective. That is when you go off and get better or learn how to do your job better. All right, so here are the types of businesses. Sole proprietorship or entrepreneurship. That is when there is only one owner. Small businesses typically are sole proprietorships. The advantages are you have pride in your product, you keep all the profit, there is quick decision making, flexibility, and tax breaks. But the disadvantage, and this is where most small businesses actually have to close, you're financially responsible for everything. You have unlimited liability, meaning if something breaks on your product, you have to fix it. It's hard to raise funds, and it's hard to get qualified employees. Here are 3 examples of companies that started as a sole proprietorship but are now corporations. Ray Kroc opened McDonald's or bought a local fast food restaurant, made McDonald's. Sam Walton bought a Ben Franklin store that later became Walmart. See Sam Walton, Walmart. James Cash Penney bought his partner out in 1912 and became the sole proprietor in J.C. Penney. That's how you get the name James Cash J.C. Anyway, so that is how, or those are examples of companies that are now corporations that started as sole proprietorships. Then you got partnerships, which is 2 or more people. Your advantages are very similar to the sole proprietorship. You can raise more money, you get tax breaks, but you can bring in special talents. So, for instance, let's say that I know how to cook food, but I'm not very good at managing business. Then maybe I would want to open a restaurant with a business person so that they could use their business skills and I could use my restaurant skills to create a successful restaurant. The disadvantages is complex decision making because those partners may argue. You also have unlimited liability and full responsibility for finances. In a corporation, the company is treated as its own entity, and it is owned by stockholders. The advantage is it's easy to raise money because people just buy stock in your company. It's run by a board of directors, which are professional businessmen. Ownership is easily transferred by buying and selling stock. There's limited liability because you are not the person. Just because you're a stockholder doesn't mean you have responsibility to fix products. Disadvantages is it's expensive to start. It's very complex. Owners have very little say. There is more government regulation, and you get double taxed. The corporation pays taxes on the profits, and then the owners pay taxes on the earnings that were paid to them by the corporation. How do you become a corporation? First, you get permission from the government. 2, stockholders invest money. 3, stockholders elect the board of directors. What's the oldest and most common type of business? Sole proprietorship. In a sole proprietorship, what happens if the owner dies? It closes or is passed down to a family member. Even though sole proprietorships make up 90% of businesses in the United States, corporations make most of the profits. And a lot of people think that corporations make up 90% of their businesses. But what you got to understand is all those McDonald's only count as one business. All those Walmarts only count as one business. So there's a lot more small businesses than there are corporations in numbers of actual businesses. So why should Americans buy from American? To keep the money in America. All right, types of competition. First, we got to talk about a couple things. Consumer sovereignty. The consumer decides what is produced. Now, that does not mean that you go into a store and you tell the store owner what they should make, and it says customer is always right, and that's not that you walk in and you say, oh, well, I'm buying this for $5 because that's what I say. That's not how it works. You either buy it or you don't. And if enough people don't buy a product at a certain price, then the owner eventually has to lower the price. Or if everybody buys it and you keep running out, then you need to raise the price. That's how consumer sovereignty works. Pure competition means no one person controls the market. Free enterprise is when individuals answer all 4 questions and allow for free trade. Profit motive or incentives is when individuals are willing to give up a factor of production for personal gain. So essentially, you're willing to cut corners in order to make money. So the first type of competition is non-profit. That is when organizations are not interested in making a profit. They just want to help people. For instance, the American Red Cross, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Habitat for Humanity. All help people, all make a lot of money, but they just take that money and give it to other people. Monopolistic competition is the closest thing to a pure competition. There is very little difference between products. There's few barriers to enter and exit. And producers have a degree of control over price. So your examples could be potato chips, toothpaste, toilet paper, computer software, and operating systems. A lot of times, so for instance, let's say potato chips, people don't really have a favorite potato chip, but rather a favorite potato flavor, I guess. So like if you like, say, sour cream and onion, you don't necessarily have to have Lay's sour cream and onion chips. And I'm not saying that everybody is like this, but for the most part, if you walk into a store and the Lay's are $2 and then the Utz chips or whatever are $1.50, you're probably going to buy the Utz chips because they're 50 cents cheaper. And so that's how monopolistic competition works. There are so many products that no one can control the market. Then you have an oligopoly, where just a few companies compete to run the market. Best example is Coke and Pepsi. And you can say, oh, there's other soda producers, but really there's just Coke and Pepsi. The competition for Coca-Cola is Pepsi-Cola. The competition for Mountain Dew, which is owned by Pepsi, is Mellow Yellow, which is owned by Coke. The competition for Sprite is Sierra Mist or 7-Up. Sprite is owned by Coke. Sierra Mist, 7-Up owned by Pepsi. They have a complete lock on sodas, and they are, they're in direct competition with one another. If one of them went out of business, it would greatly impact the soda market. All right, then you got a monopoly, and that is when one company controls everything. Monopolies are illegal in the United States if they are private, but if they are government operated, then they are legal. And so your example of United States government operated monopolies are like the post office, Greenville Utilities. I know you're like, well, wait, why shouldn't they have competition? Well, I'm going to use the example of Greenville Utilities. They have to bring their electricity through power line, either above ground power lines or in the ground power lines. And so if you were to change your electric company or your utility company, the company would have to come dig those lines up and then put new lines in the ground. And so if people were constantly doing that, then legitimately there would just be people digging up yards or running electrical lines over your house and stuff, and it would not be nice and it would not be safe. So it is legal for the United States to run a monopoly. Other countries, De Beers Diamonds was a monopoly, may still be a monopoly. USA monopolies that were broken up. Biggest example is Standard Oil. So Standard Oil, there are still companies today that spawn from Standard Oil, like Exxon and Chevron, and there's a lot more. But John D. Rockefeller, who was the richest person in American history, at least, I'm not going to say in world history, but in American history, John D. Rockefeller is worth like $1 billion in the 1800s because he owned oil, and everybody needed oil for pretty much everything. You needed oil to travel in your car. You needed oil for the railroads, and so on and so forth. So Standard Oil was a huge monopoly. All right, how do you become a monopoly? Well, you can do it two ways. First is a merger, which is when you buy up all similar companies. So if Nike bought up Adidas, Reebok, Puma, all the companies like them, and they were the only provider of tennis shoes, then they would have created a merger, and that merger would make them a monopoly. You could also be a conglomerate, which is when you buy all companies that provide your capital goods. So again, if Nike buys, say they need leather, so they buy a dairy farm to get the cows to make the leather. Then they buy a trucking company to send their goods back and forth, and then they own factories in China to put the goods together, and so on and so forth. That's would be a conglomerate. Corporations are usually large, multinational, multi-industry. That's like what I was just saying. So if Nike owns a dairy farm because they want the leather from the cows, they're probably also going to sell milk and meat because they have those cows. So they're multi-industry in that sense. All right, guys, that's all I got for you today. I hope you're all doing well, and I can't wait to see you.